After 11 chapters, the fight between Gojo and Sukuna is finally reaching its final phase, and while usually I'm really excited for the next chapter, not only are both Gojo and Sukuna gradually losing cursed energy, meaning that reverse curse technique is going to be less reliable, it's clear that next chapter, both fighters are looking to close the battle with their ultimate technique. And although I might not be the first to say it, I really do think that next chapter, Sukuna may finally succeed in taking down Gojo. But before I get into that, I do want to say that if you like JJK content like this, consider giving the video a like and subscribe. You're going to want to stay updated on these analysis videos, and every like goes a long way to helping my videos reach others. Thank you guys so much in advance, and enjoy the video. Using what is essentially a master 10 shadows technique, Sukuna is betting on these 3 things to combat Gojo. Number 1, he's using Mahoraga in order to counter the Infinity. Number 2, just as Gojo said, Sukuna is now using other Shikigami other than Mahoraga to apply more pressure on Gojo and force him into a bad move. And finally, number 3, Sukuna is using various shadows just like portals, becoming more unpredictable as he tries to land a decisive blow upon Gojo. Now, there is another thing that I do believe Sukuna will use next chapter, but I'm gonna save that for near the end of the video because I do want to go over these 3 strategies, and I also want to go over what Gojo could do to maybe turn the tables. Now, with the first part starting out with Mahoraga, it pretty much goes without saying that this is the most important part of the overall strategy. Now, we've known since the end of chapter 232 that Mahoraga has adapted to Infinity. Therefore, Mahoraga has essentially opened the rule that as long as it's making contact with Gojo, Infinity will then be turned completely off, thus giving Sukuna the chance to strike Gojo himself. Now, there are 2 important things to take away in this first strategy. First of all, although Mahoraga has adapted to Infinity, Sukuna himself is still at risk from being attacked by Gojo, meaning instead of attacking close range, Sukuna will likely stick to mid to long range to find more openings. The second thing to keep in mind is Mahoraga itself isn't going to be enough to defeat Gojo, meaning Mahoraga's life is essentially on a timer right now, and it's up to Sukuna, which like I said has a less effective means of attack, to basically be 1 step ahead of Gojo, which we already know is going to be proven difficult given Gojo's 6 eyes. But like I already said, Mahoraga is going to have the most important role in order to take down Gojo. Moving on though to Sukuna's second strategy, we have the remaining Shikigami. Now, let's not get carried away here. The Shikigami themselves aren't really necessarily here to take down Gojo. The true purpose of the Shikigami in this fight is simply opening up Gojo's defense, using distractions and putting on pressure to force Gojo into making the wrong move. Because technically speaking, unless Mahoraga is touching Gojo, as we've already established, the remaining Shikigami aren't going to be able to bypass Gojo's Limitless just as Sukuna himself can. This rule even applies to the fusion Shikigami we've seen in chapter 233, the fusion beast Agito, which looks to be a mixture of new and totality. Regardless of this though, we can't downplay the versatility that each Shikigami brings. From Rabbit Escape to the Piercing Bull, believe it or not, each Shikigami has its own use case, and even though Gojo can destroy each Shikigami with ease, the destroy Shikigami's technique will just be inherited by the next Shikigami. And regarding the fusion beast Agito, it's going to be very interesting to see how Sukuna takes advantage of a new stun effect while also taking advantage of totality strength, because if Sukuna can correctly time the attack between Agito and Mahoraga, not only will Gojo be completely defenseless, but due to new stun effect, he might also just lose his chance to counterattack. Anyways, moving on to the last strategy, we have Sukuna manipulating the shadows and using them as portals, giving the King of Curses a huge boost in not only mobility, but unpredictability as well. Now, we've already seen how Megami uses the 10 Shadows technique, especially when it comes to using the shadows, but we've also seen how Sukuna uses the 10 Shadows technique, and well, it is simply just not a close comparison. One look at Sukuna's new formation in chapter 213 told us everything we needed to know of the sheer difference in technique proficiency between the 2 sorcerers. And it just goes back to the fact that for the past 11 chapters, what we've been witnessing is nothing but the pinnacle. So of course, we just can't expect Sukuna to be conventional when he's acquired such a strong technique. There is likely even more applications of the 10 Shadows technique that we have yet to see. And I think before Sukuna is forced to give Megumi his body back, I have no doubts that we'll see exactly what the pinnacle of the 10 Shadows technique really is. But wait a minute, what can Gojo do to successfully counterattack against Sukuna's plan? Well, it's just as Gojo said at the end of chapter 233, I gotta settle this with my unlimited hollow technique. Just like many have speculated in the community already, it seems as if Gojo is looking to end this with his maximum technique. And I don't really want to get into what the maximum technique might be, but one thing to keep in mind with this is, as Gojo said, there is a noticeable charge up time, meaning that there's no way it's going unnoticed by the King of Curses. And in my opinion, this is where Gojo is going to have to make a difficult choice, which may very well be the deciding factor on his life. See, if we assume that Sukuna can't stop the charge up time for Gojo's technique, Gojo is going to have to decide whether he wants to attack Mahoraga or Sukuna. And that's because, given the fact that Sukuna is already going to notice the charge up, if Gojo attacks Sukuna, he might actually miss. On the other hand, if Gojo attacks Mahoraga, that might just give Sukuna the opening he needs to take out Gojo, especially given the fact that Sukuna's already going to have his guard up. So yeah, overall, I think Gojo can settle things with his unlimited hollow technique, but it's also going to depend on the choices Gojo makes, because as the fight comes to a close, both parties are just going to have to take risks in order to fully close out the fight. Nevertheless, there is one more thing that I wanted to go over before the end of the video. And this is honestly just a personal theory for me, but what are the chances that Sukuna can actually use Megumi's domain, the Chimera Shadow Garden? Now, before you go into the comments asking me what am I reading or that's not how it works and stuff like that, just hear me out for a minute. Now, we know a sorcerer's domain expansion is constructed by infusing their innate domain with their curse technique. We also know that each sorcerer has their own innate domain. Therefore, technically, even if two sorcerers were to have the same curse technique, they wouldn't have the same domain expansion. But what about Kenjaku? Kenjaku's domain expansion, Wound Perfusion, was constructed in chapter 205 using the anti-gravity system, a curse technique belonging to Yuji's mom, Kiori Itadori. And not only did he construct it using the anti-gravity system, he also went a step further and made it a barrierless domain. Now, according to this, even if Sukuna can't use the Chimera Shadow Garden, what he could do is imbue the 10 Shadows technique into his malevolent shrine. Now, this theory does have some holes in it. For example, the use of domain expansions. We know that since Sukuna and Megumi share the same body, that means that the damage that was done to the brain due to the overuse of domain expansions is shared between Sukuna and Megumi. But what if it actually isn't? Because if they are shared, that would mean if Megumi is released, he wouldn't have use of a domain expansion. So unless Gojo is okay with that, which he could very well be, I'm just gonna hold out hope that that isn't the case. But yeah, that was pretty much the theory. I just would really love to see Chimera Shadow Garden again. If you like this video, make sure you give it a like, and if you like this kind of content, make sure you subscribe to the channel. Hope you all have an amazing day, and peace.